Welcome everyone to Just a Game episode 11. Jordan, my friend, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, man. So, I'm curious. In the, last 10 plus years, you've been doing all sorts of things, playing poker full time, running bbcpoker.com, staking business, portfolio managing. Out of all of those, what have you gotten the most enjoyment out of?
Um, I mean, playing poker initially was the most fun, for sure, because going from like zero, where I had legitimately had nothing, to making like 100K in a year playing poker the first time, was like the biggest high that I've had professionally in my life. So yeah, nothing compares to like the first year the first year where I played full time. Um, yeah, there's no high that's like I think professionally that comes close to that. Like making $1 million, like the first $1 million or something. It's not as big of a deal. Like I didn't know when it happened. Like, even like it didn't matter that much. So the first like 100K, which was kind of like proof that it was viable that I could do it. Um, that was that was a pretty big high. And then the second year, I got Supernova Elite, and then it felt like it was like more stable, because for people that don't know, Supernova Elite meant that I paid PokerStars $180,000 in rake, and then they gave me back 120,000 US at the end of the year. So I got some of it throughout the year, but that was the basic gig. And so as long as I broke even, and I was winning, but as long as I broke even, I would make 120K a year, and that was like a job, right? Because I know that at the time I felt like I knew that that program would be there the following year. So I knew that this year, I made 120K USD for breaking even plus profits, and then I knew that next year I would have the same job. So I went from basically broke, uh, jobs, working at clothing stores and like 7-Eleven, convenience stores and stuff, just doing door to door sales. So jobs paying me something like $20,000 a year, $30,000 a year for full time work, to a job paying me $120,000 a year, for full time, more than full time work. I was working a lot of hours, but obviously something I enjoyed doing. So yeah, like the first year and then the second year were, um, yeah, like nothing comes close. They were like freedom years, like so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so you'd say it's more satisfying if you made $1 million playing poker than it would be um, maybe like a big trade that you made.
yeah. I would just say going from zero to, it's not the money.
Uh,
It's like going from zero
yeah,
to
that accomplishment.
like, yeah. I mean, like, because as a young man who's 20, I don't know how old I was. I can figure
Early
it out. I can
20s.
figure it out though. 16 years ago, it's like 21. So I was a 21-year-old who's making like $20,000 a year, who doesn't have a college education. I'd attended some courses before, but I didn't have like a degree or anything, and I wasn't attending college at the time. So as a 21-year-old working at clothing stores or doing door to door sales, making, like I said, 25, $30,000 a year or whatever the number was, going from that to making 100K a year plus with prospects, realistically making 200K a year, because I mean I did a six figures of profit with six figures, for breaking even from the VIP program. So going from 30K to 200K, and then again having prospects for being able to do it the year after and the year after, so almost feeling like I had a career or a job. Like, what's going to come close to that? You're on in 2008 you're making $30,000 a year, and in 2010 you're making $200,000 a year. Like, you know nothing comes close. Like, making having a really successful investment pay off, or having a staking business that does really well or whatever. Like, that's all great. It's awesome, and I live in a nice house and I have a nice car and like all of that shit. But I'm not broke. So that was the big jump. And like I think that, like when I talk to people like kind of casually, and like we're having conversations, and or students like horses, right? And they get sort of confused, like, oh, like, I don't know, I'm not that happy, or like this happiness conversation comes up. And happiness is really complicated, right? Like, happiness for a lot of people is really complicated. Rich people aren't happy, right? Poor people aren't happy. So like, I mean, like, but poor people are happy and rich people are happy, right? So like, the happiness thing is complicated, right? The misery thing is super easy. Okay, like the misery thing is super easy. Like if I drag a razor across your chest, you're gonna feel misery until I stop, right? So like when the pain stops and the stress level sort of subsides, then you feel way better, right? And so if you ask someone if they're happy, they might not know the answer. Like lots of people, like they don't know the answer. But it's like, are you miserable? And I think that I was miserable a lot of the time, probably prior to having some economic success. I felt a little bit like I was drowning, right? Like my family was in the United States. I was in Canada. I was born Canadian, but I didn't grow up here. And in order to work, I had to come back to Canada. So my brother and I were in Canada, but we didn't have any financial support. We didn't have any money. We didn't have any parents. We didn't have any connections. We didn't have any degrees. We basically had nothing. So we spoke the English language, which was a huge edge, right? Like if I came to Canada and I spoke Spanish or something as my first language, it would have been way harder. But aside from the fact that I spoke the language indigenously, like English is my first language, aside from that edge, I had nothing. I mean, like I didn't know where I was. I didn't know. I hadn't used any of the systems before. I didn't know how to drive a car. I got my driver's license when I was 27. Um, so like
Yeah.
I had as close to no edge as you can get to, like I lived in a friend of my mom's house. I paid rent. She threw me out. She threw my shit in the snow. I had to find somewhere else to live. I lived with my friend. So like I had very close to no edge. And my friend
Good.
was a guy that I worked with, right? Like he was just a guy that I worked with. He was a
Mhm.
coworker that I'd worked with for 2 weeks, and I called him and I was like, "My shit's in the snow. Can I stay with you?" And fortunately, he's like my best friend now. Fortunately, he said yes, right? So yeah, like so going
Did
from
you go to Vancouver when you came back to Canada? Did you go
yeah
to Vancouver?
yeah. So I
Okay.
came to Vancouver, but to get to Vancouver, um, I took a bus from Seattle to from the airport in Seattle to Vancouver. And when I got off the bus at immigration in Canada, they held me there for I think about 10 hours. And the reason they held me for 10 hours was because I couldn't prove I was Canadian. They said, like, do you have a passport? And I said no. You said, do you have a driver's license? I said no. Do you have a birth certificate? I said no. I have nothing. And they said, well, then you can't come in. And I said, well, you can't send me back because I don't have anything to prove that I'm a U.S. citizen either. So I'm at this border, and you can't. Where are you going to send me? You can't send me to the United States, and you can't send me to Canada. You can't let me into Canada. So what do you want to do? And they started just calling. Like I gave them the names of like my grandparents, and they called my grandmother, who is a deacon in the church, and like they called her, like, and she said, yeah, that's my grandson. And then they called the person that I was going to stay with, and it took like 10 hours for me to get across the border. But I had no documentation. I was just like was a dude with some clothes. I had no money.
Yeah.
So again, like I spoke English. So like there are people who have it worse when they go to a country, right? And I had a passport. Like no one's going to try to throw me out of Canada once I was in. Um, but yeah, like I didn't know where anything was. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know. I just didn't know anything. So yeah, it was like a relatively high stress situation. Like I had food scarcity and stuff. Where uh the money that I made was for food, and sometimes if I didn't make money, then I didn't have food. Like that sort of thing. And we ate based on how well we ate was dictated by how much money I was bringing in when I was doing like commission jobs as a door to door salesman. So yeah, going from that like that sucked. Like it's fine. Like it was fun too. Like it was because everything mattered, right? Like everything mattered. Whereas right now, like if I'm not trying to be an asshole, but like if I make $100,000 in a year or something, or an extra, what I mean is extra. If I make an extra $100,000, if I make an extra $200,000, I don't really give a fuck. Like nothing's gonna change. You know what I mean? Like my house is gonna stay the same, my car is gonna stay the same, my diet's gonna stay the same, um,
Yeah, it's all relative.
my financial security is gonna stay the same. Yeah, like it doesn't matter. Like I'm gonna work, I'm gonna make more money, but but then like at that point in my life, an extra $500 made a huge fucking difference. So yeah, so things were more, I don't know, life felt more real, I guess, because it was more stressful. But yeah.
Yeah, I just was curious because I do a lot of different things as well, so I wondered if you all the different things you do, if you had one specifically after doing all of them now you enjoy the most. So I guess you still say that high of playing poker is gonna be at the top?
Yeah, I mean, as far as like things I enjoy the most, it's probably teaching. I mean, that's why teaching is like one of the bigger parts of my schedule.
Yeah.
Um, it's yeah, teaching is probably the thing that I enjoy doing more. than anything else. And again, that's mostly because like I'm in a good spot. So helping
Mhm.
people who think that I can help them, who I think that I can help in terms of just improving their strategy, improving what they're doing, showing them where they're going wrong. Um, that's like the most fulfilling thing I can do. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
It's nice, yeah, for sure.
yeah,
Was there a
good.
was there a specific moment you had that you realized, playing full time that you needed to start building something bigger, and that's what kind of how you got into the staking business? Because obviously, for people that don't know, you went from poker to staking, and I'm sure the portfolio stuff was somewhere in between there, and then, of course, bbzpoker.com.
Yeah, there was no like, there was no like aha moment where I figured out that I needed to do
I
staking.
figured, yeah.
Yeah, staking was I started staking when I started playing. So like they kind of went hand in hand. It was I was when I started making money playing, then the guys that I was friends with that didn't play, um, they wanted me to teach them how to play and stake them and stuff like that. So when I started playing, I started staking, and it just seemed it was very naive for sure, but it was a very like basic calculation, which is like, okay, if I can make $100,000 a year playing, then if I stake two people and I take half their money, uh, I'll make $100,000 a year not playing. So I'll just so I can retire. You know what I mean? Like now, obviously that math's super naive, but that's like the basic calculation, right? It takes a lot more players to replace like a six-figure income because people don't. People aren't as good. They just don't make as much money as I could make. And then there's risk and things go wrong and like you have to pay people and all kinds of shit. But the basic premise is still the same, right? And it was very intuitive to me. Like it wasn't something I had to think about. I was just like, as soon as I started playing, I started building the staking group. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, yeah. I mean, it was just they went hand in hand, playing and staking,
Yeah, it just
same time.
spiraled, bas or snowballed, I wanna say.
Yeah, yeah. And so I always did them at this like simultaneously. And so when I had like when I was staking like 150 people by myself, and coaching them and stuff like that, that was just like a lot of work. Um, so yeah, but no, I don't know.
Yeah. Do you think? Because with bbzpoker.com, obviously you starting a business, you have this edge already in being a poker coach and whatnot, which is a pretty important if you're ever gonna start a business, right? Like if you're starting a business and shoemaking, and if you never made a shoe in your life, you're gonna have a tough time doing it.
Sure.
But do you think, because poker is very, it's like you've always said, it's a zero sum game, and you're trying to make these plus EV decisions. You deal with risk management. Do you think that gave you a head start in ability to run your own business?
Yes, but I mean, sort of because um that's sort of complicated because everybody who's a poker player starts a staking business. And like I say everybody, but like a large number of people who play poker stake one person, right? And the thing is, it doesn't go very well, and so they stop, right? But they still had a very, very, very small staking business, right? Or they stake two or three people, or they stake five people, and it just doesn't work. And they don't like commit to making it work, and so they close it down. But a large number of people who play, like if you just go door to door with poker players who have made like $500,000 or something or more, and you ask them, have they ever staked anyone ever? I would say the majority will probably say yes. So, like on the one hand, does the background in playing poker specifically, as opposed to staking, did that help me in business? I mean, staking's business, and all of the guys that I was competing with, in the staking business, they all played poker. So it's complicated because on the one hand, I want to say yes, right? But on the other hand, you know, they all those other guys played poker too. So I don't know. Maybe it's something else. Um, Now, when it comes to like, I would call it basically like there's playing poker. Like my three phases have been like playing poker, staking poker players, and then I call BBC Poker basically like a retail business where we sell the strategies that we use and have developed um, in to the public, right? And that's basically the retail business. So has having done staking for so long, has that helped me in the retail business? For sure, because I'm using a lot of the same people, right? As you know. So
Mhm.
Zach is someone that was involved the staking business and is very intimately involved on the retail side of the business. Zach does a lot of the work. You're on both sides of the business, right? So the people sort of have. I didn't have to go find everyone. You know what I mean? Like there are certain things that you don't need in a staking business that you need on the retail side, like a website developer, and videography work, video editing type shit. But a lot of the work is I didn't have to find new people, and finding new people is like really one of the hardest parts about business. And I already had a bunch of good people, and staking gets you in connection with a lot of people that you can trust, right? Because if I'm going to send $100,000 to some kid in Estonia and trust it, which is I'm just picking a random country, and then
No,
he
you definitely just
nailed it. Yeah,
Pulled
sure.
Yargo's name out of
Yeah,
a
yeah,
hat.
and then trust that he's going to send you
Uh,
back 125K when he wins 150, right? If you're going to do that on trust, because there's no, well, if he wants to abscond with my money, there's not really that much I can do about it. I'm not flying to Estonia to get my 150K back. So, um, if that means I trust the guy a lot, right? So if that guy tells me he can do something, on the retail side of the business or whatever, then I trust him. In a way that like you're never going to have that level of trust with some guy that applies for a job. So I have a big pool of people that I've staked or do stake or whatever, and it's a massive network of people who have various different skills, and I can trust all of them completely, right? Like these are people that I could leave $1 million on a bed, go for a walk, come back, and $1 million will still be on the bed, right? Like some people don't have a single person that they trust like that in the world. Like some people don't trust their parents like that, which is fair. I don't trust mine like that. But I trust guys in poker like that. I trust some guys in poker like that. And so um, like it's a different thing, and it gave me a lot of people to pull from. So I know what you were asking when you asked the question. It was more like a skill set thing. Like did playing
yeah, I was
poker.
gonna rephrase the
Yeah,
question, but I
yeah.
loved your answer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was more of a skill set question, but staking gave me the people, a large body or a large pool of people that I could trust, and yeah, so like that helped tremendously.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I was basically yeah, I was gonna come back to it and just say, versus, someone who maybe was working a sales job and they just say, "I wanna start my own firm." Completely different, right? Like, if you go from your specialty is sales to then go into a CEO type role, managing a company, it's totally different. Um,
Yeah,
because a
I
lot of
mean,
the times
yeah, so I would say like on that front, that's also kind of not being generous enough to I think the sales guy. Like if the sales guy is just like literally he just sells apples, like that's all his job is to sell some widget, right? And then he's
Mhm.
going into managing people, then sure, right? But most of the time when the sales guy wants to go into business for himself, not all the time, but frequently, he was a manager. And if the sales guy was a
Yeah.
manager, he's in a similar spot, right? Maybe uh, he doesn't care about like some kind of non-compete thing, and he just poaches all of his former staff from the company that he was working at previously. It's a very common thing. So he just steals all of his previous employees. They sell something very similar to what he was selling before. So he goes into business for himself, essentially just competing with his old firm, knowing how to sell the product and knowing the people because he just steals them. So that's that guy got a pretty good edge, in that business, right? Like I don't have an innate edge on that guy. I would say that relative to a sales guy, when it comes to uh, actually capital allocation, so when it comes to like making investments, when it comes to um, managing money, staking helped a lot. And
Mhm.
poker also helped a lot, but staking helped a lot. I know, like an awful lot. Getting used to the emotional component of dealing with sunken costs, because it's one thing to academically understand what sunken costs are, like, and anybody, most people should understand what sunken costs are, right? But academically understanding what they are and then being able to fucking deal with them, like rationally, there's a reason why there's an economic term that describes it, right? It's because humans don't deal with it well naturally. So um,
Give an example
yeah, so I mean, like if you
from
lose,
a
so with a poker player, you need to like objectively evaluate his skills, right? How much money he has lost doesn't really matter. The money's gone, right? So you're asking yourself a question every single day, like, can this player, is this player profitable? Can they continue to win, right? So if some guy's lost, $150,000 of my money, and he's definitely going to get it back, like Yargo, for example, since we've talked about him, that's fine. We just keep going, and I don't give the guy a hard time about it because stressing him out is not going to help, right? And me stressing out about it is not going to help either. So I don't even give a shit. I don't even worry about it, right? And we just keep calm and carry on. But I still have to evaluate whether or not I think Yargo is capable of winning. Right now, in his case, it's easy. But there are other people where they lost, $80,000, and I have to like objectively evaluate, can this person actually get the money back? Like, can this person is this person someone that I want to work with today? Is this person is this a bet that I would make today? In this situation, if I wasn't already here, like if I didn't know this guy and I wasn't stuck 80 grand, would I continue on this course, or would I not do this, right? The ability to deal with that helps with investing, right? Because if I make a bad investment and it doesn't work, or it's not working, um, maybe the share price, if it's a public equity investment, maybe the share price declines 40% or something like that, right? um, has my thesis changed, right? Like, is the value of the business still what I think it is it still worth what I think it is, or is this opportunity still valid, viable? Has anything changed? Has anything deteriorated? Or has the market price just changed in a way that, like, it sucks but is fine, like, it is what it is. um, so I'm better equipped to deal with that than the guy that does sales.
Yeah.
Because I got a
Which
lot
I
of
think is pretty
investors.
important
Yeah, sure.
because it's like part of it is how your business looks in the market too, like the market you're in. Because obviously we've had those types of strategy conversations before where, it could be where does BBZ compare to the rest of the competition?
Hmm.
Uh, and a lot of that I think comes from what you were describing before.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Um,
trying to be just ruthlessly objective and like ruthlessly rational.
mhm.
Staking helps with that, right? Being successful in that business, and having putting in a lot of reps there, having done it for a long time, that has helped. Dealing with, okay, this thing sucks, but I'm gonna do it anyways. It's really painful to drop people. Like, it's like firing people. Like, dropping horses is really painful, especially if you've been coaching the guy for 4 years, and he works really hard and whatever. Even if he doesn't work that hard, he works hard enough to make it uncomfortable. He kind of tried, whatever. Like, getting, deciding that the best course of action is to discontinue is not an emotionally easy thing to do. That's not easy. Pulling the plug, losing for 40, 80, 120, 160, right? I'm talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, that's sucks. Like, that whole experience sucks. And um, kind of steeling yourself to it and just having to do it a lot of times. Um, it's just like training. Like, it just, it's better prep than it's better prep for like pulling the plug on things that don't work. Like, we had a cash game. BBC Poker had a cash game component to its business, and for various reasons, it wasn't working. And like, I yanked the plug. Like, I was like, this isn't going to work. We can't do it under those types of conditions. We're going to stop. And similarly, like, we've looked at buying certain businesses, and I've bought certain businesses. The guys that are close to me know what they are. Public doesn't know what they are necessarily, but and it's going to stay that way. But some of the businesses that we've looked at buying, that we've come very close to buying, where it's like, this might not work. Like, this is like maybe too much of a culture shift. This bet is like going to be make the business too capital intensive, um, in a way where, like, I don't know if the ROI on the capital that we invest is going to be there. So, and we don't have the skill set, and then we're going to end up being a prisoner of this other guy. Like, it's just, and we can go really, really, really far, and I can reach the conclusion, like, this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work. And we've put in a lot of work. We've put in a lot of money. We've put in a lot of time into evaluating this thing, and like getting these other. We're going to disappoint a lot of people when I inevitably piss everyone off and say we're not doing this. Um, but yeah, I have the ability to do that. And I do think that staking helped me to get good at that. Because that's also just like kind of trusting yourself, right? Because you've come really far in this direction, and now you're like, I don't think this is the right direction anymore. And it's like, well, you thought it was the right direction yesterday, and you thought this was the right direction 2 months ago, and you've got like 10, 15 people that think this is the right direction. It's like, yeah, but fuck all that. We're not doing it. That's like also something that I think, yeah, staking probably helped with.
So you think it's more staking than it was actually playing poker that helped you?
Well, I mean, on the business side, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, staking is a business. So,
Yeah, for
playing
sure.
poker is a game, and you get good at it. And there are things like, Jordan Peterson has this I think it's Jordan Peterson. It could be somebody else, but it doesn't really matter what you do, like which path you choose. What matters is that you do it. Like what matters is that you choose a path and you go in that direction, right? So on the professional poker side, or like dedicating myself to doing that for as long as I did it, the big thing there was the things that needed to be done, I did to make it work. So for example, I wasn't very good. I wasn't good enough at math, in my opinion. So like I went to a website called Khan Academy, and I started doing like I started with like I think it was like maybe it was kindergarten or grade one or something like that, and I went from like grade one up until calculus, um, and I got into differential equations in college, so like I'd done math before, but specifically like there was like a lot of statistics and probability stuff that I wanted to get much better at, and I could have just done the statistics and probability stuff, and that would have been much more efficient. But I just didn't want to be missing anything, so I just went from scratch all the way through. And I think that like I would never have done that if I wasn't playing poker, right? Like if I was in some line of work that required me to um, like read books, I would have just read a lot of books. Do you know what I mean? Like that specific, like that math exercise was only done because of poker, right? And so poker made has made me do a bunch of things, right? Obviously, because of poker, I was in staking, right? Like I wouldn't have gotten to staking without poker. Um, so
Mhm.
poker is really important, but again, not in the ways that like people like to mystify it. Like you're playing a game, and like the game makes you like be super rational and like control over your emotions, and like you're like you're just a fucking guy who's like doing this thing. Like I don't know, I don't have that much. Um, I don't think that the crossover is as significant. I do think there are a lot of people that can't do it for what it's worth. Like I think that I don't want to say that there aren't people that can try to play poker that will just don't have the emotional composition to succeed at it. But I don't know if it was poker giving. I think I had the emotional composition in large part. So yeah,
So it's more emotional than anything.
I think most things are emotional. I think
Yeah.
most things are emotional, especially once you get past like I don't know much about IQs, but like once you get to like a slightly above average intelligence, it almost like just barely above average intelligence. I think having an edge on intelligence matters. But I think that once you get to slightly above average intelligence, it almost all comes down to emotional stuff. Like you can just fuck up being smart so many different ways. It's not even funny. Like you can just alienate all your friends. You can steal from people. You can end up being a drug addict still. Like just because you're smart, you're smart. You might be creative. It might make you much more willing to try substances you shouldn't try. You might try a substance and think because you're smart, you think you can do things and not get hooked on it that other people who are less smart might be like more wary of. Um, and in a way, perverse way, they're smarter than you. Like I think that when it comes to poker specifically, you can be really smart, but because you did everything right and then it didn't work, if that's emotionally crippling, you're gonna be a terrible poker player. Like
Yeah.
if you figure everything out and then it doesn't work, and then that sends you off emotion, like sets you off emotionally, and you just start punting and right, like it's all emotion. So
Mhm.
but you can't be stupid. And I don't mean that until like, in like an insulting way. I just mean like you can't have significantly below average intelligence and be really successful at a game that involves thinking. Like it's not
Yeah, we
it's not
talked about that on the last episode, yeah. One of the reasons why people fail a lot because they just don't obviously recognize that. I mean, not everybody takes an IQ test and knows what their intelligence is, so,
I didn't.
um, yeah. I think I got, like, 140. I sent you a picture of it, and then I thought the test was fake.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it means nothing to me. I don't,
And you and
it's
then and then
140
you just
sounds really
left.
smart, but I don't,
Yeah, 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 yeah. Left me on red, and I'm like, "Yeah, it's not an accurate test." Alright. Aside from, money, obviously, what was the inspiration to start bbzpoker.com back in 2019?
um,
It's crazy how long it is.
yeah, it is actually. In large part, it was pads.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I mean, it was 2019, 2020. Like pads gave me a lot of confidence. So for people that don't know, pads are gonna be like, wow, can't believe I played such a big role in Jordan's thinking, but you did. So, we had a pretty successful staking business, and things were going reasonably well at the time, actually. But we started to hear rumors of like pads, like BitB, which was one of our primary competitors, was like considering pulling back, or was going to like consider closing up shop and stuff. And that made me very insecure about the position I was in with staking. Um, and when it came to the retail business, there was a substantial risk that launching the retail business, where we sell courses, like basically my thinking publicly, that was always a big edge for or at least we thought it was an edge in staking, right? People, we would stake them and then I would teach them, right? And so a lot of the people actually like that I staked going into the decision to launch the retail business, which was really more in like 2020, um, was was it 2020? No, it was 2019. You're right. I'm
It
old.
was 2019
It was
because that's when you
2019.
saw
Yeah, yeah,
that because that's how you started streaming on Twitch
yeah, 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 yeah,
and
yeah.
you
Yeah,
became
it was 2019.
public.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, um, but yeah, so the a lot of the players that I was working with prior to the going public with everything and like launching BBC Poker were really uncomfortable with me doing it. Jay was really uncomfortable with me doing it. Actually, we had another partner at the time who was really uncomfortable with me doing it. A lot of horses were really uncomfortable with me doing it. We lost horses over it. A couple horses left. They're like, why would I get staked by you when I can just buy your material for like whatever it costs, that sort of thing.
Yep.
And uh, yeah, Pad sort of helped me to come to terms with the fact that like what I was risking wasn't worth very much. So like if my primary competitor, who I thought was better than me at it, um, uh, well actually not thought is not the right word. He was better than me at it. So if my primary competitor, who was better than me at staking, was getting out of the business, and I didn't know why, but I mean like there aren't that many reasons that would be right. Like there's, like it's a hard business to be in for sure. But if he was getting out of it, I didn't feel like I was risking a lot. Like he was just willing to close it down. So, so I was like, this throwing this hail mary into the retail business. If it works, I end up with something that's worth a bunch, and if it doesn't work, I end up with nothing twice, and I already have nothing essentially. If the staking business is worth closing down, I already have nothing. So so Pad sort of helped me without trying. Like he sort of helped me to realize that the risk I was taking um, with the staking business wasn't as big as I thought. What was the question exactly again? That was a big part of my thinking though. But what was
Well,
the
that kind of answered it. Well, I was just gonna the question was what inspired you really to do it? So clearly there I would say fear inspired you more than anything,
Yeah,
right?
so that's
Yeah.
yeah, that's always a big part of a professional poker player's existence, right? Is if you're a real professional poker player, if all the money that you make comes from the game, then you're always worried about the format that you play dying. You worry about all of the things that people like the traditional concerns. Like the evolution of AI, kind of disintermediating you and making it impossible for you to make money. Um, the size of the player pools, continuing to shrink to the point that you can't make a living anymore. Like those sort of paranoias exist until you get financially independent of them, basically. Like until you've got enough money where they don't fucking matter. Like if something really bad happens to poker, doesn't matter. I got enough money that I don't care. I'll go do something else. Um, so paranoia, fear, like being really concerned about the climate or whatever, has always played a very substantial role in all of my decisions. And it's a big part of just who I am in like in everything, like in life. Like, like it's yeah, I mean, like fear is a pretty big part of being a human. So,
Yeah.
worrying about shit uh, drives a
The
lot of my decisions. Yeah, and it,
the
and it, and it, and
paranoid
it
survive.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it drove a big part of that one. Like, um,
That's Jay's favorite saying.
yeah,
The paranoid survive.
only the
Yeah.
parents survive. Yeah, yeah.
Um, so you didn't really think that or I guess to add on to the question, you didn't think there was maybe a gap in the market that you thought you could attack and fill, where you thought you could do this thing better than others? That kinda didn't really cross your mind at all, it's more of just, "I'm gonna fucking do it, and whatever happens, happens."
Well, I mean, how did the fuck? I don't even. I don't like honestly. I don't even remember how like the genuine truth about how we got started, like what the seed idea for it was. I don't really remember. Yeah, I don't really remember how it got started. Once we decide to do something though, then evaluating the competitive landscape and then finding a hole in it is just like I don't know that like when I don't know people act like it's smart right like and some people like John like Ape Styles right Ape Styles was like the course idea was brilliant right so all the courses that existed when we launched our courses on our site bbcpoker.com all of the courses that you could get pretty much cost $1,000, right? Like you could subscribe to Run It Once. Um, Shout out to them; they taught me a lot. You can subscribe to Run It Once for $100 a month at the time. Today it's $200 a month. Okay. And that was one way that you could learn. You could, and I always had subscriptions to training sites. My entire poker career, I always had subscriptions to training sites, um, and lots of them, lots of them. And I watched infinite content about how to play poker. So like sit and go grinders.com, Poker Savvy Plus, Deuces Cracked, Sox Poker, um, fuck, like all Blue Fire Poker before Run It Once. Like you gotta like you need access to the information if you're trying to compete in poker. Like it just is what it is. It's just a price that you pay. You need access to wherever the information is available at a high level. So um yeah, so John, he made the comment that like the pricing strategy was really really intelligent, because again the courses that were available from the other operators or distributors were at least $1,000. um and there are two things that kind of go with that, right? So like the first one is the courses are $1,000. The second one is that like the course has to be worth $1,000. So first of all, it's difficult to persuade a customer to spend $1,000. It's a significant amount of trust that the customer has to place into your brand to to get them to spend $1,000. It's just a difficult thing to do, and it's more difficult, right, than convincing someone to spend $5, obviously, right? So those are two different things, right? You still have to trust you in both cases. You still have to find the customer in both cases. So higher prices are generally better. If you can get them at a high frequency, like obviously that'll be great, but it's still more work, right? And it's not free. And then there was just like there were no courses available. There were zero. There were no courses available below like $500 at the time that we launched bbcpoker.com. So like also that's one is convincing the customer, right? But on the other side is the course has to be worth $1,000. So you have to convince the course creator, the content creator, the player, right, to produce something that's worth $1,000, which is like I think Pads' course is like 100 hours or something like that, like 150
Yeah,
hours.
it's a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
right. So like that's a big ask, like to get someone to do that. Now if Pads wants to do that, he goes and he does it. Like that's great, awesome. But if you if you're having a conversation with a professional poker player who's really really talented, he's really really good, and you're like, listen, let's make a course like that, and it's like, the other guy's gonna say, how much work is it? He has to ask that question, right? Like, how much work is it? And the other guy might say, if you tell him like, yeah, it's gonna be like 150 hours of content that you have to make, or 100 hours of content that you have to make, and then you got to prep for all of that content and map everything. It's like, dude, you're talking about a lot of work.
Yeah, it's like 300 hours to maybe make 100, right?
Yeah, maybe
Yeah,
more, but yeah. So
maybe more, yeah.
yeah, so so we just say, yeah, we attacked the market in a different way. So we just attacked it with
Y
in a more
It
modular
sounds
way.
like you just yeah, I was gonna say it sounded like you just started, which to be fair is probably the hardest thing to do anyways, is to just start, and then you kind of adjust as you go, figure things out as you go. There wasn't a real plan beforehand to be like, "Oh,
No.
I think we have a real." Because I think, like, for me, right, if I've told you before, maybe at some point I'd like to start my own thing,
Mhm.
whether it's poker or not. I feel like with everything that I know, I'd want to have or find a way where or find a market where there's like an edge to be had, right?
Mhm.
Like you see something that all these other companies are doing that they or I'm fucking losing my train of thought, but you get my point.
Yeah,
I
well, it's
ramble
not
on
even
too
like
long.
in our
Yeah.
case, it wasn't even that I. It's not even that I think that they're doing it wrong, right? I'm sure they're making tons of money, right? It's not that I'm not accusing them of doing something wrong. I
Oh
just
yeah, neither was I.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
just
just like I could do it differently, and
mhm.
it will probably work. And this like I think that again, people you can't be a dumb guy and come up with a strategy that'll be effective. But coming up with a strategy that will be effective is a lot easier than people think it is. The hard part is the execution, right? The hard part is like
I
getting it
agree.
all
Yeah.
done.
Mhm.
That's the hard part is doing the fucking thing. The strategy is like not that hard. So
But I think that's part of like if you were starting like a whole new thing, that's part of it. Like you have the idea, but then you have to work out all the things within it. So I guess I'll go into the next question.
sure,
Um, Other than hiring me, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced when starting bbcpoker.com?
yeah, nothing comes close to hiring you. Uh, so the biggest challenges. I mean, there's always going to be people challenges. I think. Um, it's like it's and like developing skill sets that I personally didn't have, right? Like learning, like you were a part of this, like learning how Facebook
Mhm.
ads worked. right? Like learning how, like we spent a lot of money on Facebook ads without knowing how they worked, right? People who think I'm smart, people who think I'm smart. If you guys knew how much money I spent on Facebook ads without knowing how they work, you'd be like, hey, he's not that smart. Like he's
Well,
not.
you hired a guy first, so you
Yeah, I
can't.
mean, sure, but like I still should have like I was busy and I was working and I make a lot. I can make money in a bunch of different ways, like coaching and making
Mhm.
content and da 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 da. Sure, but I still should have known. Like before, I spent like I don't know $500,000 on something. Like I should probably have a pretty good idea of how shit works. So, you know, um, but I didn't because I'm stupid. And so, like I don't know. It just you spend the money on a month to month basis, you're kind of comfortable with it, and then like, a few years goes by and you're like, fuck, how much money have we spent? It's been a lot. I should really understand how this works. And then, you go get educated about in a more in a higher level way. And so now I have a pretty good education, right? But it took a long time for me to get that education. I spent a lot of money, a lot of it badly. Um, Way more money than like most people would be able to rationally justify, but whatever. And uh so that was hard. I mean, I don't know, it took a long time for me before I got good at it. It's really important, so I should have been good at it sooner. So it was a mistake. You could say it was a mistake for how long it took and everything like that. I think I have a pretty good understanding of it now though.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean like moving competencies around as like the cost of certain services changed over time. Um and having the confidence to, like move in different directions, fire certain people if you have to fire them and like hire different people. Those sorts of things. Like but it's always like personnel stuff. That's really hard. Personnel and then skill set. There's nothing like it's like a business is like there's like the shit you need to know how to do the stuff you need to do, and then you have to be able to get the people that need to do it, right? And so like it's always going to be some combination of those things that are going to be hard. There's nothing like it's a lot of hours. Like so what? You know what I mean? Like you're doing what you want to do. Like so who cares? Like that's like that's not hard. That's not it's not even like a regret or anything or like it's just whatever. Um, so yeah, the hard part is like I would say firing people is the worst part. Always. So if you say like what's the hardest part, like even the skill set part, like that usually comes with some kind of fun. It's like, oh, like
That's what I was gonna
we've
say.
been doing this so badly for so long. Like if we figure out how to do this properly, we're gonna do way better than we did before. Like that's exciting.
Yeah.
Whereas like firing people is always like, oh my god, I don't want to do this. Like we need this guy. Like it's gonna be terrible if we fire him or whatever. We stop working with this firm or however you want to think about it. Like different things. That's always slow, painful. It doesn't. It's just like awful. Like yeah,
Yeah, because
that's
it's
the
not
part.
an easy decision ever. It's something that you think about for months before you probably get to the
Yeah,
actual
probably. Yeah, I mean,
answer.
but months is probably if you're really good at this, you probably think about it for months. If you're bad at this, you probably think about it for like years. It's just like this things are just like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just it's hard. So,
How do you 'cause I think, I have 2 questions, but they kinda go hand in hand, because I think what separates us, bbzpoker.com, from other training sites is the price point. Obviously, we talked about that before, with the price of courses being so competitive. But with how affordable the courses are, how do you, balance that and being a profitable business? Something you think about a lot.
well, the difference is that if you sell a course for $1,000, you have to earn the guy's trust once, and that's great. You earn his trust once. If you earn it, you make a fuckload of money, and then you do it, 1,000 times, make $1 million. Congratulations. Okay. Now, if you try to sell a product at a much lower price point, like $100, for example, which is where we started, then you're going to have to, if you want to be viable, really, then you're going to have to earn that guy's trust over and over and over again. So you make a product, and then if it's good, he'll come back, and then if he's, and then you make another one, and then you make another one, and they have to be compelling, and they have to add value, right? Um, so that's mostly it. Like trying to just like that's my understanding of it. My intellectual understanding is like I am going to have to earn. So some guy sells a course for $1,000. Great. I have to earn the same guy's trust 7 times to get him to spend over $1,000. Right, 6 times for $900, 7 times for 1,050. So I'm gonna have to earn that guy's trust. Well, we at the price we sell now, right? Our courses today are $150. So we've increased because we've
Mhm.
had escalating costs on the back end for people who are like, $100 a course, like $1,000 is 10. It's like, yeah, okay, you're right. But yeah, our prices have changed over time. Just because as the
Everyone's prices have
yeah, I mean, like as the
come up over
basically, it's
time.
just like
Yeah.
the cost of running the site, went up. My the with the COVID and the money printing, all that shit, like my all of our costs went up on the back end. So yeah, we weren't viable for a little bit. Like I had to change the prices. But yeah, that the basic idea today is that like if someone's got a course for $1,000, then for me to get that same revenue, I have to earn this guy's business 6 times in a row, 6.5 times in a row, whatever. So which is fine. I'll just do it. Like, I'll make something that that person really benefits from, that they can easily consume, and that will significantly change their strategy and improve what they're doing. And then I'll do it again, and then I'll do it again, and then I'll do it again, and I'll do it again. And like, as long as that person trusts that, like, when they buy something from me, they're going to get a lot better. Like, their understanding of how to play no limit hold'em is going to improve by way more than what it cost them to buy that course. Like the EV difference is just obvious. Then we're in business. And if I can't convince people over and over and over again to come back, I'm fucked. It's not really complicated. I mean, like, it's just a really obvious, like, that's just how it works. And so, just like everybody, like, I have people who say, negative things, right? And it's like the reality of my business is like the products are so cheap that the only way that we can stay in business is for people to come back over and over and over again. So at the end of the day, the reality of what's happening is that, like, we're not like, there's no trickery or anything with what we're doing. Like, it's everybody, like, the backbone of our business is all repeat business. And it's just not, it can't really be anywhere else. Like, there's not enough reach in poker for with the way that our products are priced for a different thing to be happening. Like, it just doesn't work. It just, there's too many people involved. It just doesn't work. I can't feed everybody. Um, if there was some other thing going on. So when people buy from us, they buy again and again and again and again and again and again. And yeah, that's like, and it's just a different strategy than, like, get them to buy one time, and then, like, if they like it, great, and if they don't like it, oh well. Like, I'm not saying that that's how they feel, but at the end of the day, like, you buy the course, and once you spend $1,000, like, great, adios. Like, we have this one product, this one trick, and like, we're done. Um, yeah, so our business is just different.
Yeah, I've always wondered about that because, you talk about getting somebody's trust, and if the barrier to entry is so high, like obviously $1,000 compared to a $150 course or $100 course at the time, right?
Mhm.
It's do you think about if the sales numbers would be close even if the price was double? Because even still, if you think about, like, let's say 300 versus 1,000, that's still a huge price gap. Obviously, some of these other courses, they're longer in depth, or wider, broader
Mhm.
topics. So you ever think about that? Just like, oh, like let's say you sold 100 multi-way systems. Do
Mhm.
the same 100 people buy it at double the price?
Yeah, 100% they do.
Yeah.
100%. But a big part of the seed for the strategy in terms of, like, low price was also, well, there were two. There was a genesis for that, was came from two different places. The first one was the fact that the reality was that our audience was on Twitch, and my impression of the Twitch community, could be wrong, was just generally speaking, it was a bunch of, like, bunch of, like, younger guys on average. I don't know, like, Twitch is not didn't strike me as like an old crowd. So, like, the older crowd might watch YouTube or whatever, but at the time when I was guessing the demographic of Twitch, and I didn't look at do any research, it was just like a gut intuition. But
Mhm.
my gut intuition of the demographic of Twitch was it was younger people, and so that was where we were marketing. So that meant to me that cheaper was probably going to be better. Again, I could be wrong about that. And I've met lots of older gentlemen that are on Twitch now that I've been doing this for a long time. It's not like we don't have clients that come through Twitch that are older. But I
Mhm.
didn't even know what Twitch was when I started streaming. So I know I'm an like, you always call me a boomer, but
When was the last time I've said that? It's got
yeah,
to be
I'm just saying
years.
you do. You call me that. So
Maybe
um
maybe years ago.
yeah, so
Yeah.
so I think that, yeah, so that impression that Twitch was like a more vibrant, even Discord, right? Like, Mac introduced me to Discord. I had no idea what Discord was. I used Skype, right? I used Skype. I used YouTube. I didn't know anything about this Discord, and I didn't know anything about this Twitch nonsense. So just because I was unfamiliar, probably I had a bias in my thinking that, like, the Twitch community is like younger people, and so that was one reason for pricing it more affordably, because, like, I just thought our audience would be way more accessible for that actual audience. And then, uh, what was the other one? What was the question again? I keep losing track of the question.
I was gonna say it was basically about you answered it though. If the price of the courses were doubled,
Oh yeah,
because
yeah,
'cause you've
yeah. We
already
would still
gained
get the
that
commission.
trust. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, oh, the other part is like I think that at this point now, people would come back and buy our products, no problem, right? But
Mhm.
getting them to try it, it's easier if it's cheaper. So you could
Yeah.
say like from a gateway perspective, the first course could be $150. Like simple poker systems could be cheap, right? And then every add-on course could be much more expensive because once they are subscribed and they trust me and like da 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 da, then I can try making like a high margin thing on the back end. The problem is like it's sort of bullshit because like I can make money making courses that are 10 hours, or 10 to 15 hours for $150. So I'm not going to charge $300 for the course. Like I don't. It's probably a better business strategy to try to do it that way, but like it's also like when you're trying to explain it to a customer, it's like, why is this one 300 and this one's 150 when they're both the same number of hours and it's both the same guy? It's like, cause now you trust me and I can get more money out of you. Like, I don't know, it just feels grimy. So they're not priced
He's
that
a
way.
man of the people, see?
I don't know. I
That's
mean,
what
like
he's
the man of my staff maybe, because I don't want you guys, like people that work with me, to have to like explain that to some disgruntled dude over and over and over and over and over again. Like, because it's not really that logical. So, yeah, but I
Well,
do
you can
think
make
I do think that I could double the prices today and decrease the business by an amount that would be profitable to me. Like obviously, if I doubled the prices, then the business would slow down, but like we would have less sales, like we would sell less units, but it would be accretive. I would make more money, and so like Alex Hormozy would be like, then double the price, and I'm like, I don't know, I don't really want to. So,
that's your guy, Alex Hormozy.
I mean, he helped a lot. Yeah, he helped.
He's yeah, no, he's very smart and has really good content.
Yeah,
I just was I remember last year when we were going through that and I'd get a Hormozy video, got like 10 of them in my in our
yeah. I mean,
chat.
if I figure out something that works, bro,
Yeah,
like I go super hard. Like
yeah,
I
he's
go,
great.
yeah. I watched all of it, like at the time.
Mhm.
So
Do you think there's anything specific that separates BBZ from any other competitors, do you think, about the content itself?
yeah, I mean, like I speak English as my first language. I'm the majority of sales on BBC Poker. So like Ape Styles has a course, um, Ponditi has a course, Yargo has courses, but like the majority of the sales come from me. Um, and so when you're talking about BBC Poker selling courses, like still for the most part, you're talking about me. I think if you took my courses and added them up, and then you took everyone else's courses and combined them, I think I'd probably beat all of them. I'd have to check, but I'm pretty sure. So like it's a fairly significant lead in 2025, right? Like if you look at year to date sales, I make up the vast majority of the sales. So you're talking about my content versus the other coaches. Okay, so
Not really, I mean, I meant more specifically to competitors, not or
yeah,
is
so
that what you're
my content
saying?
versus other competitors, but like really my content versus other coaches, right? So if you say BBC Poker, how does BBC Poker content stand out relative to other sites' content? BBC mostly we're talking about, unless we're talking about seminars, mostly we're talking about me if we're talking about courses because
Mhm.
I represent most of the sales. We're talking about me versus other coaches. So my personal edges are that I've been teaching for a long time. So again, I started teaching poker when I started playing poker. So again, like I started staking when I started playing. When I started staking, I started teaching. Okay, that was the whole relationship. So I've been teaching people how to play poker for 15 years, which is longer than a large fraction of the professional poker player community today has been playing. So I've been teaching it longer than they've been playing. English is my first language, which helps. Um, I have a strong emphasis on the students being able to implement the strategy that we're talking about in a course easily. So I don't really have much interest in like, okay, so because I've been doing this for a long time, I can look at a solver output and say like the solver is doing. I can see that the solver is doing this. I don't understand why it's doing this, and I don't really give a shit. I'm gonna do this other thing still, and that will make a lot of people uncomfortable, right? But now I'm only really willing to do that if the EV loss is extremely negligible. But tracking the EV loss today is really easy, so it's not really a big deal. It used to be harder, but it's not hard now. So there's really no reason not to do that. So, if you give a calculator, because at the end of the day, they do programs, right? And if you say, okay, there's this really hard strategy to execute, and it's worth $100. This really hard strategy as a fraction of the pot. Let's just say it's worth $100. Okay. And there's this super easy strategy to implement. Super easy to implement. Super easy. And it's worth $99.98. As a human, you're like, give me the easy one. You know what I mean? Like it's the same amount of money, so just give me the easy one. And the solver is going to give you the hard one because it hasn't have a choice. So it's just going to tell you like, this is the best answer. So here's do this. So now I am very insistent that like the strat like you really shouldn't be accepting any kind of significant EV loss. Okay. But you know, you can definitely accept, in my opinion, like insignificant EV loss uh for a much easier to use strategy. So my content emphasizes the student's ability to deploy the strategies. Um and I have a lot of practice at doing it. Um I think I have more practice probably than anyone else in online poker or live poker, probably. There's just like there aren't that many people who have tried to do like there's only I mean it sounds arrogant as fuck, but like there's only one BBZ. Like there's only like most of the guys play a lot still. You know what I mean? Or they always played a lot, right? And I did play a lot. I got
Mhm.
Supernova Elite 4 times in a row. Okay, so I paid PokerStars $180,000 in rig 4 years in a row. You can go find my poker bio on the BBC Poker YouTube channel where I break down my shark scope graph and my poker career. So, um, I've played a lot, but I've done more teaching. I think in terms of it's like at this point in my life, I think I've done more teaching in terms of hours than playing. And I don't think that that can be said for probably for anyone else. Um, so, I've communicated a lot about how strategies work. I think I'm pretty good at it. Emphasis on how the strategies work. Um, the content is very recent. So, like the backbone of the content has been produced, like Simple Poker Systems was produced in 2023 in December. So basically in 2024. But at the very end of 2023, like November, it was launched in November of 2023. Um, that's Simple Poker Systems. So that's borderline 2024 content. Um, Pressure Systems was launched in 2020. When was it launched, Jake?
It's 24.
2024. It was launched in 2024, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then I just launched Multi-Way Systems in 2025. So the content for me that people are buying today has all been done in the last like year, 6 months, month. You know what I mean? Like it's all newish stuff. Um, Whereas if you buy a course from a competitor, maybe that course was made in 2016. Maybe it was made in 2018. I don't know. I'm not trying to insult them. I don't know. But like maybe they were made in 2020. Maybe they were made in 2019. Maybe they were made in 2018. Maybe they were made and then they get updated sometimes. But the backbone of the content is still old.
Mhm.
So, um, and that's the thing,
Have
right? Like,
you
if I launch a course and it's $150 and it's 15 hours, I'll launch another one. So, like, if it gets outdated, I have no problem replacing it. But if you do a 100-hour course, you really going to replace it? Are you really going to replace it? Like, probably not.
yeah,
So,
it's easier to just add on at that point, and
yeah, yeah.
you do like a 5-10 hour add-on, but yeah. Do you, have you watched any other competitors' content in the last year or 2? Like, have you had the
Yes,
curiosity to do it?
yes. I mean, like, I watched Pone Diddy's content so Pone Diddy coaches for us, and I've
Yeah.
watched his PKO course on Run It Once.
Mhm.
Um, And so yeah, I mean, like, sure, I still consume content on
Yeah,
in
yeah,
other
yeah.
places. Yeah,
I'm
um,
curious if you did it just out of curiosity, like, what does everyone else do and how's their approach, right? Like,
yeah.
I've
So
done that a bit. Yeah.
yeah, I would say like the competitor whose content I consume the most would be Run Once. So Run Once, shout out to those guys. But yeah, that would be if I'm not consuming BBC poker content, then I would consume Run Once content. But again, like I was consuming Pone Diddy's content for the most part, and Pone Diddy coaches
Mhm.
on BBC poker. So I just like it was organized and it was structured, and I was like, that's what I wanted. So I got it from them.
Yeah. Nice. I wanna actually go back to, when you were talking about, and I wanna spread the gap a little bit more to make the question easier because I don't think it's that close the way you framed it. But when you have a strategy that makes you $99.98, right, versus $100,
Mm-hmm.
let's call it 90, 100,
Mm-hmm.
or actually, sorry, let's make it closer, 95, 100.
Mm-hmm.
To reach high stakes, do you need that 100?
No,
You don't think so?
no, no,
Yeah.
no. People are really bad at poker still.
Yeah. I
So
agree for what it's worth. I'm curious. Yeah. I that's what I thought. And I always question that with myself when I'm playing or when I'm studying. And I'm like, do I really need to know this minuscule detail? Like, is that the edge that's going to be between or defined between me and some other top reg in my pool? Or if I
no,
went
so
to
the
go
thing
play a
is
Titan
too,
or
yeah.
something?
So like high stakes is always relative too, right? So there's like high stakes on site A versus high stakes on site B is just like two totally different
Sure.
like skill set requirements. You might have to be a fucking savage in one example, and you might have to know to fold 7 2 offs in front of the gun on the other side. Like it's just different.
Yeah. Fair enough.
So that's a part of it. But the other part is generally speaking. So there are two things. Okay, so the first one is um the level of execution in a given player's strategy, unless they're elite, like unless they're already an elite player, it's almost never what they think it is. Their academic understanding of what to do might be pretty good. Like if you ask them like what this range should look like or what they should do or how this works or whatever, some people will be able to like give you sort of satisfactory answers.
Hmm.
Um, but then when you go into their database and you like pressure the scenarios where they think that that's what they're doing, they're not doing that. They're doing something else, and they don't know why they're doing it. They're just doing something else. They just make something up for like why, and then like it's just shit. And so like their level of execution of what they that's what's getting in their way. Like if they're at mid stakes or they're low stakes, and they feel like they can't climb, oftentimes the execution of what they're trying to do is not very good. So, like, what do I mean? I mean, if you ask someone what a button race first in range looks like, they might be able to tell you. Maybe most people can't. Like most pros can't. Okay. Like when I say tell you what it's supposed to look like, I mean go to GTO Wizard, which is not my site, and look up what it is, and then ask your friend who's a pro what the range is supposed to be, and ask him in a way where he can't see the answer, and not ask him to populate the answer for you, and he'll probably fuck it up. He probably will. He probably doesn't know. Like he might get close. Hopefully he can get close. Now there are other players who can actually who understand what that range is intellectually. Like they have some kind of grasp of what the intellectual composition of that range is. But then when you go look at what their strategy is, they're not doing that. I don't know. Like I don't know why. Like I don't really ask why. So I don't because I don't really care why. But um, making them aware that they're not executing what they think they know is a huge source of EV. Huge source of EV. And that happens all the way up to like easily the low stakes, mid stakes, and high stakes. Still happens at high stakes. So the first one is like the execution gap. That's one thing to close. And then the second one is usually the thing that's getting in your way isn't the strategy that you're trying to learn. And it's like, you're at 98, like, you're making some compromise and you think you got most of the EV out of it or whatever. That's not what it is. You have something, everybody, like most people who are playing, have something that's costing them fuckloads of money, and they're doing something really, really, really badly, or they're doing a bunch of things really, really badly, and they just don't know what they are. And it's really funny because when you like look at again like YouTube comments or something like that, like like I play a GTO strategy. I love reading that comment. I'm playing a GTO strategy, but like I still couldn't win. And it's like, you're not. What do you like? You're like if you're some guy writing the YouTube comment, you're nowhere close. You're nowhere close. And like they have no idea how hard that is. So like there's something that they're doing that's just awful, right? Maybe they have a 50% fold to turn C bet, right? Where in their metagame, the average turn C bet is 67% or 72% or something like that. So for people that don't know how poker math works, what that means is if your opponent's betting less than pot, your fold percentage to a turn to a bet should be less than 50. Like roughly speaking, it's going to hold in a bunch of scenarios and no limit holding. Okay, so on the turn. And if you're folding, so you're treating the average bet size like it's an overbet, because if you're folding over 50% to a turn C bet, then you're treating the average turn C bet like it's an overbet, and in your pool that's not true. So you're just giving away money. You're folding hands that are way too strong against bet sizes that are way too small, and it's expensive as fuck. And you need to stop doing that. And there are variations of that happen on the river. Maybe your fold to probe bet is 75%. I've had people who are really good, solid winners with like $120 ABIs, and they have like a 68% fold to turn pro. It's like, why do they have a 68% fold to turn pro? Well, they miss C bets on the flop, so that's a problem. So then they check back a range that's too fucking weak because they're checking back hands that should have been bet, but they didn't. And so they check back weak hands, and then they don't defend the checking range, and the checking range is filled with weak hands, so then they fold a lot. So Like there are different like versions of this across their entire strategy, right? Like, they could be a really high level player, but their small blind fold to button raise is 79% instead of like 69%, right? They're just folding way too many small blinds versus a button steal. Maybe this guy's like a really high stakes, solid savage, and he just doesn't know that like he's got this leak. He hasn't evaluated it. He just doesn't know. Um, that's what's killing his win rate. What's killing it's not like that he's like doing this strategy that he deliberately chose because it's way easier to implement. And the strategy that he's implementing, captures 96% of the EV of like a perfectly executed GTO strategy that no one can do. That's not what's killing your win rate. What's killing your win rate is a bunch of easy shit to do that you're not doing. That yeah, that's what's killing your win rate. So it's the execution, that poor execution of things you intellectually should know how to do or do know how to do, but are not doing. Or B, it's things you don't know how to do. Things like you just have no clue that like this is supposed to look like this, and instead it looks like that. And when it looks like that, you're hemorrhaging money, and you're getting crushed. And so, um, and then again, like those mistakes repeated across your database in countless different ways. That's what, and then like fixing those things systematically. Um, that's what getting to high stakes looks like.
Mhm. I think that's a great answer to my last question where I said, "What separates you from everyone else?" I think that pretty much answers it right there. Because 'Cause I'll be honest, I've seen some competitors' content, I'm like, "Bro, what the fuck is this? This shit sucks."
No, I
I'm
appreciate
I'm
that.
not I'm not gonna I'm not dropping names or anything, but I was very underwhelmed. Maybe this is a bad thing that I'm doing so everybody gets better. But, um, it's just, my take on it. Yeah,
Well, I appreciate
totally
that.
agree with your vision. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's a cheat code for me. I got better at coaching infinitely faster. I think
Mhm.
you took so long and I just adapted it. So, uh, nice. All right, before we wrap, I'll say this. If someone is just starting with BBZ poker today, because obviously we talked a lot about it, what would be the best way for them to get started, and what what can they do to get the most out of it?
I mean, I think you would agree. Like the first thing that someone should exhaust is like free content, right? Like go to the YouTube. Like we have a BBC Poker YouTube. This is going to be on a different channel, right? But the BBC Poker YouTube has lots of free content where you can watch, me teach. You can watch me play. Um, you can also go to Twitch where there's lots of free content. We have relationships with a lot of streamers. Ape Style still streams a little bit. Lex streams a lot. Spraggy streams a lot. So Kurt streams, right? Like there's a bunch of guys that we work with. Trot is a really active member of the BBC community, and he streams. So Finton's a guy that I've worked with a lot in the past, and he streams. Finton's awesome. So there are lots of different guys you can watch for free. And now they're trying to entertain you, and they're trying to make money playing poker. They're not trying to teach you how to play poker, right? But you will learn a lot about the game, and you should start there, right? Like you shouldn't go to bbzpoker.com if you don't know that you should fold 7-2 offsuit from under the gun. If you don't know that yet, don't go to bbzpoker.com. Don't waste your time going to that website. So that kind of basic understanding of how the game works, like that should be done on YouTube and Twitch. I would say. Um,
And even the day one boot camp, right? Because that's like,
yeah, that's
and
fair.
I
That's
know
fair.
in terms of like, going to the site, right? If people didn't know, if you go to bbcpoker.com, you make an account, you get free content. It's about,
Sure.
I think, 6 to 7 hours actually of free video content, and a lot of it's pre-flop focused because
Yeah.
it's what you got to start learning when you learn the game actually. But yeah,
Yeah.
go on.
Yeah, so I would say, yeah, like if you don't know anything about it, like if you are watching this and you've never played a game of poker before, I would say watch free content on bbcpoker.com or Twitch.
Mhm.
And then, if you have, then, yeah, you can make an account on bbcpoker.com and you can get, some free content. And then if you've gotten that and you've watched that, then I would say you still want to go to Simple Poker Systems first. That's the a course that I made, and it really emphasizes the easier high level strategy that you can execute. So it covers a lot of different things that you can do that are easy to do. So yeah, so I would say then you would start with that, and then if you finish Simple Poker Systems, then from there you sort of have like next level content. And you can kind of think about it in different ways. So if you are trying to watch as much content as possible as quickly as possible because you're a young person who's trying to play professionally, then the seminars are going to get you the most content, at the at the cheapest price, right? Like if time is like not an obstacle, you're going to watch infinite content. Then the seminars is going to be $75 for 30 days, for a month, whatever. And um you're not going to finish. You can sit in front of the screen for the whole 30 days and not sleep, and you're not going to get through all the content. There's thousands of hours. So, um that would be the way that I would go in that case. But if uh if time is more of a precious commodity, and you don't want to just like sit through content that's not really organized, because the seminars, you're going to have to organize it, right? Like you can use the filters to be like, I want to study big blind versus button today, and you can use the filters to study that. But you're going to have to do that deliberately, because the seminars are created chronologically. They're just like one seminar is created on Monday, then another one on Tuesday, then another one on Wednesday. The topics are not connected. Okay, so like, I might coach on Monday, Brian might coach on Tuesday, Ryan might coach on Wednesday, Yargo might coach on Thursday, Bowie Effect might coach on Friday, Caldini might coach on Friday. Saturday is going to be John Ape Styles, right? And we're not all talking about like what we're going to go over every week. So like I'm going to do whatever I want, and they're all going to do whatever they want, right? So you're going to get high level content. It's going to be, they're all high level guys. They all think extremely well about poker, but again, like that content's not connected, and so it's not constructed in a way that for the consumer, it's like a course. It's just not like, it's a different thing, right? Um, so if you want it organized for you in a way that's much more consumable, then you would start moving on to like other courses. And from there, my recommendations are sort of like not, I don't feel that strongly. Like you can go with whatever you're kind of interested in, right? But I think Simple Poker Systems, of all the content on bbcpoker.com, I would say that that's the one that you buy first. Um, and then again from there, you're either going to get the seminars, or you'll move on to like, pressure systems, multi-way systems, um, Yargo's work on the site, exploitative stuff from Yargo, Ryan, new
Well,
guy
there's
85's
tons.
work. Yeah, exactly. Like, but and like,
Yeah,
like
there's
I don't know how those other, my content stacks up relative to like those guys' content, whatever. Like I don't know. I don't have an opinion, but I do think that the first piece of content that you get on when you go to bbcpoker.com that you pay for is Simple Poker Systems. It's not a Styles bundle at this point in time. It's not like, it's not pressure systems. It's not river simplifications. It's not like, it's not raw. It's not Yargo's exploitative course. It's probably Simple Poker Systems.
yeah, just I think simple poker systems is great because it's gonna train you to think a certain way, which is everything we've really talked about today, and maybe in past episodes about how we approach teaching people how to play the game and how to think about spots for the most part, anyways. And I think the biggest thing I got from the course was simply that I just started thinking differently. And when people talk about playing exploitatively and all this other stuff, I think the way that you teach it is more or less how you can actually play exploitatively on the spot. Because the simple way I kind of say to anybody on just, I guess, my general approach is just solving any hand on the spot.
Sure.
And if you understand for the most part how theory works, then you'll be able to notice stuff in game more or less, and see where your opponents are making errors just by watching one hand. You'll get like a full grasp at how their approach is. Maybe you haven't played in a while, but I don't know if you feel similarly about that.
Yeah. I
'Cause I
mean,
feel
I
like
think
you've
that,
changed.
go ahead.
I was gonna say I feel like your approach maybe hasn't changed, but you definitely. I mean, you told me you've gotten a lot better at coaching the last 2 years, so I'm curious if you started playing again, how it would go. You'd
Yeah.
feel a lot different.
Yeah. So I learned a lot about teaching poker from running the CFP program. So
Mhm.
that was, so like even though I staked people a lot, when I was staking was like when I coached, we had like a seminar program, like the almost the exact same. Coaching Monday to Friday, 5 days a week. I would do a seminar for an hour every day. Everybody that I staked had access to it. So it was live. There was no delayed viewing. It was only live. Um, so that was how I coached for the most part. But then I would do like basically turnarounds, right? So if you're staking 150 people, I can't coach every single guy once a week. It's just not enough hours, right? It's 150 hours in a week. Like, yeah, right. So that doesn't work. So what I did then was I would coach people who were basically losing. Right, I would coach people who were losing. I had two strategies. I would coach people who were losing to try to coach them into getting my money back. So if someone owed me like 120 grand, like they were stuck 120K, like I would coach that guy a lot, try to get my money back. Conversely, I would coach like the top 5% of the roster. So the people that I thought were like the top five best guys on the team, I would coach those guys too. And that was so that like those guys could then teach the seminars as well, like they could assist in teaching the seminars, but also because like those guys played the most, and um, those guys were responsible for like staking kind of follows like a power law, basically. Like the most of the money that you're going to make is going to come from like the top 10% of your roster. So for sure. So I put a lot of work into those guys too. Now that type of coaching, generally speaking, was very different, especially when it comes to like turning people around. That was very different than taking people in a CFP program where I'm coaching them once a week for a year straight, and I'm trying to get their win rate from whatever the number is when we start. Let's just call it zero, just break evenish, whatever, to like some number that's like acceptable, like maybe seven big blinds per 100, right? So my job is to take this like break even guy and turn him into a seven big blind per 100 winner. So yeah, those are just like two very different things. And I got a lot. It became really important or really obvious that I needed this guy's behavior to just change like right away. Like I needed his strategy to change. Like what he was doing was not good. Because again, these guys weren't horses, right? Like so these guys aren't guys that I selected because they were good. These are guys who hired me who said like, "Hey, I know I'm not good. Please make me good." so
Yeah.
so like the emphasis was much more on behavioral change and trying to shift their strategies around. So that and yeah, and it was more dramatic. So that influenced a lot about how I coach and how I build products and how I think about teaching people no limit. Even at a high level, how I think about teaching people at a high level. There's just like much more of an emphasis on execution than there was
Mhm.
before. And that's just because I practiced coaching a lot more. I just did it a lot more. Now, as far as like solving hands on the spot, yeah, basically like you need to be able to identify the variables that like drive the scenario. You need to understand how the scenario works, and then if you do understand how the scenario works, then if you change one of the variables, you'll know how. You'll have a pretty good understanding of like where the ball's going, right? Relative to like some guy who's just like talking about exploiting but doesn't like give you a framework or anything like that.
Yeah, that's the most important thing because what I've tried to emphasize to people is, you know, yes, you can study a solver output, right? But the thing is, that's not what's going to happen when you actually go play.
Mhm.
Where like your opponent, simple one, they have a bet range spot where for the whole range they're supposed to bet small. Well, they decide to bet pot.
Yeah,
What the fuck you gonna do
yeah,
about it? And then people just, get super dramatic and they don't think rationally and they over adjust and
yeah,
then they
exactly. Or under
screw up the
adjust.
whole
Yeah,
strategy.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, sure.
So I think the way, like, if that's the way I could tell people what BBZ content is about, because for what it's worth, your course content is very similar to how you would go about your seminar content.
Yeah,
It'd be
it's
the
very
same.
similar to how I would teach the CFPs
Yeah.
now too, right? Like, yeah, it's all connected.
Right.
Yeah, at this point, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. All right, we can wrap there.
Awesome. Thank you very much, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. Catch you in the next one, everybody. Peace.
Yeah, thank you.